I don't take it so seriously, but you know, that's the way it is. I just wanted to say a few words about, what the pubs, first of all about what next week's debate is about, and the speakers, and also about what we're trying to do with the cap and gown. It's a bit of a plug, I'm sorry folks, but there is a party in it which you're all invited to, so there is an upside. The debate next week is, this House believes that... That's that crisp that Peter Jewell gave me, I think. This House believes that being in Europe is good for business. So we've got the pro and the anti. And the speakers are actually Peter's back, Peter Jewell's back, obviously speaking against the motion. Together with Bill Oliver. Bill Oliver is a Black Country-based businessman, runs he's had a much bigger company, he's now in his 70s, sort of slightly wound down, but he does a lot of major construction and all that sort of work. So he works up in the Black Country, a very successful guy. And then for the motion, we've actually got Richard Bourne. Richard, would you put up your hand, please? Richard's actually over there in the corner. Richard is leading the Labour in Worcestershire or Worcester? Worcester. In terms of, he's the European spokesman locally. And we've also got Anthea McIntyre, who is a Tory MEP, yes, who's pro-Europe, so she'll be here as well. So that's next week. It's starting at 7:30, similar sort of format. Obviously, you're welcome. We need to get the word out. I mean, to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed about the turnout tonight. It's great to see everybody, don't get me wrong, but I don't think the word's got around to all the party activists and all the rest of it. Most important, and pass this around to people, what we're looking for is we're looking for people that are pro that could go anti or Brexit, or Brexiters that could go pro, depending on the arguments. We're looking for the undecided next week. That's the ones that the BBC are actually interested in interviewing, yes, and picking up on. So it's the undecided voters that'll be on national television, national news. So do pass the word out. We've got Mark Easton, who's the Home Affairs editor, who's a very well-known, extremely well-respected journalist. Where do you guys know Mark Easton? Yeah. He's a good guy, is he? Yeah. Really excellent. So, we'll be on BBC One News, so do pass that word around. Anyway, I want to invite you all to a party. We spent the last 2 weeks being closed, open. We spent a lot of money, completely refurbished this place, new upholstery. I hope you've all spotted the wallpaper, which I think is amazing. We're a political pub, but we're also a rock and roll pub, we're also a music club, we're also a quiz pub, we're also a poker pub. We do all sorts of things at the Cap and Gown. And most importantly, we spent a lot of money. This place was getting a bit shabby, and we're actually opening the pub as a bar cafe, or a cafe bar, whichever you prefer. On Monday, we'll be open from 8 o'clock in the morning. Thanks to Miranda, who's still here, who's going to be serving people pastries and wonderful cakes, homemade cakes, and we've got the best ground nut to cup coffee machine this side of Worcester. There isn't anything like it. We grind the stuff and so on. So we've invested very heavily in a bar cafe, and we're doing a opening launch or an opening ceremony. I'm going to ask Richard to come along. I might put a ribbon up, Richard, and then we put a plaque on the wall. But genuinely, we are having a party on Saturday afternoon between 3 and 7, and it really is your only opportunity to get a free drink out of it. Right? It's a glass of Prosecco, a pint of bitter, we're doing whatever you want, a coffee, try our coffee, but we're also putting on a bit of food, courtesy of my ex-partner. We're doing, I don't know what, canapes is a bit posh for this place, but we're going to try and do, we're going to Iceland. We looked at the prices for Marks and Spencer and thought it's out of order. 24 canapes for 15 quid, that's a bit excessive. Anyway, so you're all invited, pass the word around, it is open house. We'll put it up on Facebook, but it's between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock on Saturday. And then we're following it, in terms of the European debate and our appalling record, we're having a Eurovision night. So come along, you can boo all your vision. Tomorrow night, yeah, we've got the Dogs of Santorini, which is a great grunge rock band. We've had them here before. The place will be really packed tomorrow. Loads of people from all over the county love the Dogs, particularly Chewy, and they're great fun. And on Sunday, we've got Marie-Claire Berine and her husband. I mean, apparently she's got 4 different husbands. A bit quirky, but she's quite folky. We're starting that at 5:30, and of course then we've got Monday with that. So do come along to the party. I'm sorry to plug the pub, but you know, I'm not actually. I plug it all the time, so I don't care. So I'm now going to. Is there anything else, Richard, that I need to cover? Was that about it? Oh yes, the most important thing of the whole night is Helen and her team. What we're doing in these events, and as they build, we're actually going to be supporting Worcester Community Trust that have actually 7 centres that do wonderful work in this city, you know, in this wonderful city that we live in, and they help elderly people, they help younger people, and they do a fantastic job. This is actually, I think, their first foray into public raising of money, and we're going to back them for the next 3 months. They do fantastic work, and it's a huge amount of volunteers. It's done absolutely on a shoestring, I know that for a fact, and they're great people. And I want Helen to, what I've asked Helen and the team to do, the trustees, is to talk generally about what WCT do, but also to talk about one aspect of it for every debate. So the WCT lovely ladies here in the purple tops will be coming out, rattling the buckets. I'd ask you to be really generous, okay? Let's get off to a great start. You know, we're putting all of this on for free, so the quid pro quo is you've got to contribute, all right? So I'm going to hand you over to Helen, and she can say a few words. Thanks, Helen.
Ted, thank you so much. I mean, we're really grateful to Ted and to everyone at the Cap and Gown for supporting Worcester Community Trust. We're a charity, we're based in Worcester, you may never have heard of us. We run community centres and we run a range of projects. There are 3 things I'd like to ask you to do tonight. One is to put some money in the buckets that Leonie and Abby are going to bring round to you. And one of the thing that I'd like to say tonight is the money for tonight, what we'd like it to go to is our snack and chat lunch clubs for older people. So we run lunch clubs in our centres for the over 50s. They get a free nutritious meal, they get to meet people. For some of them, it's the only time they go out in the week. So your contributions tonight will go towards that. You've got leaflets on your table. The second thing you can do for us is you can book a room in one of our centres. If you want a party that's not in Ted's pub, but if you want a party in a community centre, if you run a company and you want to run a training event or a whole meeting, book a room with us, and then your contribution to our room hire goes to support the really good work that we do. And finally, we need volunteers. We need all the help we can get all of the time. Whether you're a construction skills expert, whether you like working with young people, you like working with kids in holiday play schemes, we would really welcome you to come along and join us. And we look forward to seeing you over the next few weeks, but hopefully you dig deep tonight for us. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Helen. You know, it is about community. All of this is about community. They do community stuff. We do community stuff here. It's a community that we should be building in Worcester. It's a wonderful city, is Worcester. 7th happiest town or city in the country, according to the happiness quotient. I love this city. I love being here, and I know Richard does as well. And I'm going to hand you back to Richard now to start what is much more interesting, the second part of the debate. Thanks, Richard.
Okay. We've had quite a lot of cards in, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm happy to take some more if you want to get them up. Come everybody in hush, please. Thank you. I'm going to start with Toby Badham. Is he here? He'd like to speak. Maximum 2 minutes.
Thank you, Faulkner and members of the panel. I'd like to start by making an observation. For those of you who are representing Remain, where is your passion? We've heard a lot tonight about how minor points will, well, relatively minor points, would lead to that if we were to leave, we would face some difficulty in a number of different areas. But you're not offering any idea of what your vision for the future. You seem to be saying that the EU, you don't. It's not very good. You don't really like it. It's not really going to change. But if you leave, all sorts of horrible things are going to happen. But we've beyond that observation, I'd like to say that we've heard a number of facts tonight. I would suggest that the main one hasn't been mentioned regarding this. That fact is that of the exporters to foreign fields, only 42% are actually going to the EU. That means that 58% of our foreign trade are going outside to the EU, to places that are not in the single market. Of those, that 58%, my understanding is we have trade deals with only 2 of our top 10 foreign traders that aren't in the EU. That is South Korea and Switzerland. Now, it seems to me bizarre to argue that we should be prepared to give up our sovereignty in return for what is essentially less than half of our export market. When there is and there's always the question of what extra a few extra trade deals with people like India could well offset all of these problems. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Which one of you should I ask?
Well, firstly on the passion thing, there's lots of things to be said for the EU that fall outside of the debate tonight. There's a lot of opportunity delivered by the EU. Our younger generation, a lot of them, they've grown up with the idea that they can live and work anywhere in Europe and it's their oyster. There's also the EU has, even though it hasn't created the hardware, it's the cement which has kept Europe secure and safe over the last 60 or 70 years, and and that's something that we really should feel passionate about, particularly with what we see in the Ukraine. I spoke 2 weeks ago to the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry, and they are extremely worried. Hold on. I think I've just knocked it off. Hello? Yeah, that's better. I spoke to the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry, and they are extremely worried about Britain leaving because of the signals it will give next door to Mr. Putin. They know that he desires to extend his influence back into the Baltic states, and we've seen what he's done in the Ukraine. Now, we're not suggesting he's going to come over here, but there is some solidarity there, and if it's disturbed, then that will not. Britain's not going to be just unaffected by a world that becomes less secure and a re-erection of the Iron Curtain in a little slightly different place, and the Cold War back. So don't. And that's how existential rulers like Putin see things. They just see things in terms of naked power. I can, therefore I will. And if he thinks he can, he will. And he thinks he can't at the moment, so he doesn't. So I think there's an awful lot to be said for the EU and what it brings us in terms of happiness and security in the long term. And you've got to remember what Europe was like before we created it. But there's something. I mean, there are certain of your assertions in terms of trade. Okay, so you're just thinking it's great. We'll just get rid of 44% of our. We don't care about 44% of our exports. 44% of our exports go to 7% of the world's population. 44% go to 7%. 58% go to 93%. So it's hardly like for like that we're comparing. You know, with 44% of our exports are going to just a 14th of the world's population. So I think that you are not putting like for like. And anyway, you're an out and outer, so this wasn't a question, this was just a speech.
Thank you.
I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, and I really want to put this nonsense to bed that it's the European Union that's kept the peace on the European continent since 1945. It's actually been done by an organisation called NATO. Okay, but what I find absolutely ridiculous is that where we are going in the future, because this referendum isn't just about where we are now, it's about where we're going. And under the Lisbon Treaty, one of the terms talks about, and you can go on to YouTube, you can see some of the speeches I'm making in committee in European Parliament, you can see some of the topics that are being discussed in committees, actually in all committees in European Parliament. And what we're not hearing about during this campaign is the two articles introduced under the Lisbon Treaty, the Common Foreign and Security Policy and the Common Security and Defence Policy. Now, there's only one country of the 28 EU member states that has an opt-out of the CSDP, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is Denmark. And that was negotiated before the Lisbon process took place. Now, irrespective of the fact that Britain and France are the two real military powers within the 28 member states, the two people with seats on the Security Council of the United Nations, which incidentally the European Union would love to take off our hands. We're having reports every year in the Foreign Affairs Committee on a desire for us to lose our seats. I think we've got a situation where we've got to say the world will be far more secure if we're not forced together. I'm going to stop.
Okay, thank you very much. Lady called Millie has a question.
Thank you. I can ask Paul the question if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Your comment, we don't know who we're letting in. I, to start with, don't know exactly what you're implying by that, but unlike many tabloid headlines and far-right propaganda suggest, we economically benefit more from our levels of immigration than we don't. You get good and bad people wherever, and you get a huge amount of motivated, hard-working, and in some cases trained people from both Britain and elsewhere. You also get a large amount of the opposite from both British-born and otherwise. So rather than highlighting the label lazy, especially those who are immigrants, why not set up some form of training to get them into work, which would be more of a huge economic benefit for wider borders label people?
It's Peter, actually. You said set up training. I agree with it. But I'd rather set up training for our own people first. Get them into work, get them working, look after the people we've got who are trying to get jobs. I didn't say that all the immigrants are coming in are lazy. Far from it, actually. Far from it. But it's a simple fact. I mean, this is not an immigration discussion. That's coming next week. But you asked the question, so I'll give it to you. We have... it's around about 300,000 people coming into this country. Now, there are some going out, but there's a net amount of something like 250,000 people. You can put whatever figure you want on it, and it can arguably be different, but it's a lot. It used to be about 30,000, which we needed to increase the economy of this country. There were trained, qualified people coming in to help. So how do I believe it should be? Why should it just be from Europe? Why can't it be from any country? Why can't it be on the Australians' point system? So if you need X people to do something, you could get them from anywhere in the world, not just let them float in and float out. And the security side of it, it is very simple. We do not know who is in the country. We get the numbers, we think we know, but we don't know. And there is no doubt about it, it only needs a 0.01% that's going to cause us problems, and then those people can cause huge problems. we need to look after and to ensure that the security of this country is easier for the people we've got, and rather we know who is coming in and we can keep an eye on any likely trouble. For instance, they've just said today there's another heightened alert for the IRA or something similar to it. You know, it can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be Eastern European immigrants.
Hold on, before you finish.
Yeah.
We have more immigration from outside the EU than we have from inside the EU. True? Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's add to it.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, so let's
So,
plough it on.
so it's not to do with the free market then. We have
Line it
immigration
up.
from outside the EU more than we have from inside the EU.
Which side are you on?
Would you agree with that statement?
You don't,
I like
the
it.
immigration, you don't know how many of them are coming in, because they can just come in. They have no boundary to come
Well,
on.
Schengen, everyone's got to show their passport. But we have more.
Sorry,
Will you agree with the statement?
no, I
Is the
don't
statement
agree.
true or false?
I don't
We have
agree.
more coming from outside the EU than we have from coming inside the EU.
No, I don't agree. You said you have to sign,
It's
show your passport. I've been into Birmingham Airport 3 times in a row, never had anybody to show my passport to.
I wasn't going to say anything, but in response to that question, factually that is absolutely right. In the last 20 years, 2/3 of immigrants have been from Asian Commonwealth colleagues with British passports, some of whom have gone to their home countries to bring back wives or husbands. But two-thirds of total immigration during that period has come from outside the EU.
In which case,
That was the question, and that is the fact.
Cameron then
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
But this is not
to
about
meet his
immigration.
targets?
Hold on, we're not supposed to be doing that tonight.
Why has he totally failed to meet his targets?
Can we-
Is this to do with the economy?
Yes, I'm going to respond to the question. I'm going to respond to the question from an economic perspective. And a couple of years ago, I chaired an economic debate at Birmingham University. It was actually an academic conference where all of the figures came out from Imperial College, Birmingham University and Warwick University on the value and the cost of migrant workers in this country. And the result was that we found that for every pound that it cost the Treasury in benefits or services that they draw down, they're actually paying £1.35 in tax. So the migrant communities here are actually running a budget surplus when we're still running this huge budget deficit. So if we send the migrants home, we find that George Osborne has an even bigger problem to close the deficit. They are an economic benefit to this country and an economic benefit to the Treasury. They are younger, they spend they draw down less on their health services, they are less likely to be out of work, they're less likely to be on benefits, less than half as likely to be on benefits as the indigenous population. So yes, it is an economic benefit for this country.
Okay. Somebody gave me a question early on about manufacturing motor vehicles. Would that person like to put the question to the panel, please?
Yeah, the statement was that we don't manufacture. Sorry.
I'll use this one.
Use that one.
There you go, Ted.
The statement was that we don't manufacture. Oh, well, I'm Ted as well.
Hello, Ted.
This is Ted.
The statement was that we don't manufacture things anymore. In fact, our automobile industry manufactures more cars now than we've ever manufactured.
But Nissan are
Hold on,
proposing,
hold on.
but the French are proposing Nissan
Excuse
goes
me,
back
sir.
to France.
Excuse me, sir, we have a panel who are answering the question. If you want to put a question to them, please do, but you don't put
I can answer his question.
So, who'd like to answer the question?
Yeah. Well, and to follow up, his point was he went to Rhodesia, or Zimbabwe, where everything was made in Britain. Well, of course it was. We're a British colony that we forced into buying our produce, same as we did in India and everywhere else across the Commonwealth.
Well, I don't think you were there in 1967, so as far as the manufacturing is concerned, yes, you talk about motor cars. Manufacturing is just not about motor cars. Manufacturing is about all sorts of things. If you go back a good few years ago, Bolton, Manchester, Birmingham, and the Black Country, huge manufacturing operations. They're not there any longer. They're just gone. Because they're not there.
Why are they in China?
Because the British consumer wants to buy cheap imported goods and they're not prepared to pay expensive prices for British manufactured goods.
No, it's trade
That's the
union.
reality.
Look at the
No,
steel.
it's a trade union.
Your first argument was the motor manufacturing is much bigger and manufacturing in this country is bigger. Well, it's not.
Okay, don't think we're going to get an agreement on that one. Somebody called, I hope I'm reading his name right, Brian Shaw Rudd?
Yes.
That's you, yes? Okay.
We know where he sits.
I did make some notes, but unfortunately I've not brought my reading glasses with me. But I don't have a jumper, but I'm like Cicero in 45 BC, who sat with the people that he shared opinions with, so we know where I am.
You can borrow my glasses, Brian.
I have an assortment of engineering qualifications. I have an MBA. I've worked for 2 foreign governments and a contractor to the World Bank. Minor comments rather than questions. I sympathise with the expats who live overseas whose income is reducing under the present strengthening of the pound sterling. My fuel allowance I used to spend on Cyprus wine actually. And as for the French, as for farming, if you go back to the 9th century, Charlemagne put the French farmers in such a position that they were in a position to write their own agricultural policy. That is why our farmers have had to have such large farms ready to make ends meet, other than the milk farmers. I feel that, well, economically, Winston Churchill, who was sitting up that corner, said that if you get 2 economists together in the same room, you get 2 opposing opinions. Now, I feel that the numbers that have been bandied about this evening are almost irrelevant. But it is about the economy. But my feeling is that the real issue is sovereignty and democracy. And I shall come again when those subjects are raised. I just perhaps want to say one other thing. Norway is doing rather well in what I think may not be EFTA now, but it used to be EFTA, and I think we should join Norway.
Thank you very much.
I'll just comment on Norway. We pay £128 per person per year into the EU. Norway pays £108 as a subscription to the single market. We have a say on all of the regulations that this single market brings forward because we've got a common set of regulations. Norway simply has to implement them without having a say and without having any votes on this. So the Norwegian model, as David Cameron said from the very start, is not one for Britain.
I'm going to take a question now from Darren, please. If you'll come forward. I think your question is to Jim Carter.
Yes. Not to all of you.
Okay. Hello? Okay, we were talking about the economy, but I think your first point was about sovereignty.
Yeah.
And people said sovereignty and democracy is the most important point here. In the EU, UKIP's got, I think, 23 seats in the European Parliament out of 75 British seats.
73.
73. It's got one seat in Westminster.
Yeah.
Where's the sovereignty there? You had
Well-
12% of the vote in Westminster, you got one seat.
Yeah. Well,
In the European Parliament, you've got 23 seats, and you're saying that Europe makes 80 or 90% of our laws.
Sorry.
It's turkeys voting for Christmas.
Oh,
You
yeah,
don't want to leave the EU.
Sorry, this is not. Sorry, I'm going to cut it there.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to step in.
No.
Sorry. I am.
Okay. Yeah, I am. I'm one of the turkeys voting for Christmas, so I want to lose my job as a member of the European Parliament and I can go back to making umbrellas. Now, I'm not in this for a political career. I actually agree with you on the point you're making. I assume you support proportional representation. Yeah, well, as a former Social Democrat, I do as well, and I think it's disgraceful that the Green Party got 1 million votes in the general election. My party, I'm opposed to politically. My party got 4 million votes, and yet the Scottish National Party got 1.5 million votes, and yet they had 57 MEPs. Both the Greens and my party had 1 vote, 1 each. But of course, we have to play the cards we've been dealt. What it shows at European elections is that people actually really use that as an opportunity to vent their true feelings about the question of the European Union. We came from a situation in the West Midlands where we didn't have any UKIP MEPs when we went into that European election, and yet we ended up with 3 MEPs. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm there to represent the citizens of the West Midlands of 428,010 votes that Jill, Bill and I got that elected us as MEPs. And you know, I'm quite happy to go there. But we don't have democracy. And Phil was saying, Phil, I would hope will contend as a former Liberal Democrat MEP, and Philip, they will both acknowledge that the power block within the European Parliament actually is with the 2 larger groups, the European People's Party and the Social and Democrat groups. They're the real power brokers within the European. I know you sat with the EPP, but certainly I'm sure I would hope you'll contend, Phil, that the smaller groups within the European Parliament, you know, we don't have the power. And also what you find is that very seldom do nationalities, and I say this generally across all 28 member states, very rarely, possibly with the exception of the French, do all MEPs from different parties vote together on a particular issue.
Okay, thank you. Ted is getting irritated that we're moving away from the economic benefits.
Can I explain why?
When we did the hustings, sorry, I'm not trying to intervene, Richard, but you know, we can have 7 debates in here, and everybody has a point of view and so on. But I think it's really important, you know, that we stick to the subject. Okay, we stick to the debate. That's what debating is about. It's about focus. And it may be my fault because we did broaden it out. We did accept questions from the floor, and everybody's got a right to say something, but there's a time and a place. You know, the debate, the comments just been made, with the greatest respect to the gentleman made it, needs to be made at the democracy debate. Yes, the point about EU migration or immigration needs to be made at the EU migration debate. That's why we're having 7 debates. So I am getting irritated, you're right, slightly irritated, and I apologise. Because we're here to discuss a very serious topic. You know, it's about the economic benefits and the cost of the EU. So please, everybody, come to the future debates if you want to make a point about those. It isn't a rant. It isn't giving you the opportunity to make a speech. Yes, from the floor. It really should be on the subject in hand, and that's why we asked for you to put the subject down on the cards. Actually, what we got was your name, and I'd like to speak. That's why we said put the subject down so that we can actually keep it focused and keep everybody interested. So I think that's the point I want to make, Richard.
Right.
I hope as well. I don't want to interfere with what's going on. I apologise.
Well, at the same time, I think if people are passionate about something they've heard, I think they should be given an opportunity, whether it's a passionate panel member or...
We'll debate it later.
Yeah. Piers Willison has got a question about...
well, I was just picking up on a single point. Sorry, the point of EHICS being an economic benefit. My understanding is that we actually pay an awful lot more out to European healthcare systems for our citizens than we receive in benefits from the European Union. Now, I accept that that is a problem, that we don't charge people, but I can't see that it's an economic benefit.
No one could hear you, but I just want to point out that that's largely because most of UK nationals living in Europe are elderly and use the Spanish, Croatian, French health systems, and then they get charged back to Britain. Whereas most of the Polish, Hungarian, Bulgarian, Romanian nationals here are young and don't use the health service very much, so less gets charged back to their health systems.
Is it an
So,
economic benefit?
Yes. Yes.
So we charge less back to them for healthcare to provide than they charge us. It's not an economic benefit to us.
It is an economic benefit because it gives certainty to people when they won't go and live somewhere and work somewhere that they can access the health services. So it is an economic benefit.
No, that's a benefit to individuals. That's not a benefit to
No, but economic benefits to individuals. It is a benefit to the economy because basically it makes the labour market more flexible because people can go and work in any part of the European Union without worries about not being treated by their health systems,
that's
which
an
in
individual benefit.
No, they're not individual benefits.
If we didn't have the EX, they would have health insurance.
The fact that you actually have a more flexible labour market across Europe. What we were being told in the 70s, 80s and 90s was we didn't have a flexible enough labour market because people did not move from one part of Europe to another part of Europe, just like they would move from one part of the United States to another part of the United States. And we were told we'd be more competitive, we'd have a more competitive economy if this would take place. Now, this is a facilitating measure to help that sort of thing take place. So it does actually deliver an economic benefit, but I think that fully.
When I worked in the United States, I took health insurance. Right? I didn't expect UK to pay for it. It would have been an economic benefit to me if the UK had had a system with the United States, but it wasn't a benefit to the country. So EHICS is not an economic benefit to the UK.
But we're talking aggregate, we're talking at macroeconomic level. You're talking microeconomic level.
No, I'm saying aggregately, we pay an awful lot more out to the European for EHICS than we receive back under the same system. So aggregately, it is not a benefit. Individuals benefit, sure, but not aggregately. And if this is an economic benefit, it is not a benefit to the UK.
I think let's get on the point here of economic benefits and economic pressures. You know, no one can deny with the rise in the population well above the government forecast. And in fact, we've only seen today's figures with the actual release of national insurance numbers. You know, we've seen 1.2 million people out now, irrespective of whether we have a Conservative government, a Labour government, a Liberal Democrat government, or a UKIP government. No government can actually properly prepare and budget and forecast for such changes in our population. You know, we have 1 million people on the waiting list for houses in the United Kingdom. That's a huge pressure. You know, huge homelessness in the United Kingdom. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up building more and more houses and losing more and more of our green spaces. You know, something my mother said to me when I was a lad, she said, if I can give you any advice, she said, if you ever get a chance to buy any land, buy it. She said, because they're not making any more. And this is the fact, you know, we have to understand the huge pressures. We all know the waiting lists for schools, for doctor's surgeries. And I think only 2 weeks ago, the chairman of the BMA said we have to now accept the principle of general practice, whether that can continue in the future. That is pretty serious stuff. And actually picking up on my friend from Britain Stronger Inc., you know, what you had to say, yes, of course, we do have large immigration from outside the European Union. We do, I agree. But of course we have control over that. We don't have control over the free movement of labour. And just one little thing I wanted to say, with regards to Phil's comments, you cannot compare the United movement of workers within the United States and you can with workers within the European Union. You know, it is a completely one language speaking nation.
Thank you. Question from Chris, which is a very simple one, which is, would it be beneficial to join the euro?
One-word answer. Phil, we're going to agree on something.
You could go first.
European Union doesn't put a
No, certainly not.
Okay, thank you.
And I agree with that.
He agrees.
Yes, no. I say yes, I agree. No, it wouldn't be beneficial for Britain to join the euro. I campaigned, well not campaigned, but I had a view that it would be beneficial before the euro was created. I changed my mind when the Germans blocked the banking union. Because yes, you get reduced transaction costs from a single currency, but if you don't have a proper banking union and you don't have an ECB which actually controls properly the commercial banks and is the last resort lender, then you don't have a functioning currency area. So we are best out. It's one of those areas where we've got the best parts of Europe and we're exempted from the worst parts.
Okay. We agree. Good. Okay. Peter Kevin asks this question. Of the industry lost from the UK since 1973, what proportion has been lost to the EU compared to other manufacturing powers?
No, I couldn't give you an exact figure. But the only difference is the trade deficit between us and Europe is now 90 billion. So we're losing something, and we're buying more than they're buying from us. So that shows that there's a deficit. But I guess it's probably mostly from the Far East.
Yeah, I've no idea what the figures are, but I'm not quite sure what lies behind the question. As if it is somehow the EU is responsible for that. Well, could you just elaborate on the question a bit?
Yeah, I was responding to the imputation that the decline of industry in this country was because of the EU or because of EU membership, and I was suggesting that actually most of on the assumption that there is more manufacturing going on in the world now than there has been previously, actually it's not more manufacturing going on in the EU, it's going on in China and Thailand and Vietnam and places like that. And that therefore the issue is not with the EU, but with other global relationships that we have.
Yes. I think that's very much the answer, better articulated than I could give. But also, a point that I know Phil was going to make, we have increasingly grown our share of services rather than manufacturing, where we can add real value. And that, I think, without trying to belittle manufacturing, I spent my life in food manufacturing, I think that's where our opportunity to add further value is in the future.
Quick word from Peter.
Yeah, I made the comment. I wasn't blaming the EU for that. I was just stating the fact that we've lost our manufacturing to what it was 50 years ago.
If we increase our manufacturing capacity output, we would reduce our balance of payments position, irrespective of the value of the sterling against other currencies.
But this is a global shift, and it's not something to do with the European Union. It's when I went on my honeymoon a few years ago to India. When I was coming back at Delhi airport, I got talking to this guy, find out what he was doing. He'd gone to outsource all of the manufacturing capacity from a manufacturing company in West Bromwich to India. And that was a big move over a period of about 20 years. But what we have seen more recently is that some of our big manufacturers like Jaguar Land Rover are trying to bring their supply chains close to home. So there isn't a completely gloomy picture for the future of manufacturing. Now, we can have some growth in manufacturing in the future because we are seeing this bringing back of supply chains. But when I asked them what do you mean by bringing them back, they said bringing it back to Europe, not bringing it back to Britain necessarily, but because they see their home area of production as Europe, not just Britain.
Thank you. Alan Evans wants to speak. I hope it's on economic benefits, please.
Benefits?
Benefits and costs.
Sorry? Yes, my question was, why is there such a singular lack of investment in the northeast and Scotland? You can understand how the Scots are so miserable about the rest of the country when they have sort of been forgotten, like Govan shipyards and things like that. Nobody makes any ships anymore because the South Koreans make them. Surely we can get some ideas together to build ships or build anything that we can obviously trade with the rest of the world, because we haven't got any ships to trade with the rest of the world. The merchant marine just doesn't exist. My second question, if I can allow one, is what happened to all the what do they call it, auditors the auditors in the EU for years and years and years didn't write off where all the money was going. They wouldn't sign it off. So where has it all gone, that money? Is it run by the mafia? It makes you wonder.
Okay. I think that's a good question.
I mean, I'll make a very quick point. The way I believe manufacturing can work best is by, excuse me, I think the way manufacturing can work best is by deregulating. You know, if we have to encourage deregulation, but of course we cannot do that with the European Union model. So, you know, one of the great benefits of when we vote to leave the European Union on June the 23rd is that we will be in a position where we can actually look far better at deregulating. As we saw, I wasn't a fan of Mrs. Thatcher, but one thing she did do, you know, I have to look back and contend, is that she managed, by deregulating as she could then, she managed to kickstart the economy. Yes, she did a lot wrong, and that's a completely different debate. I'll probably agree with my friends over there on the opposing side far more on some issues now. The second point you made about signing off the accounts, well, it's been over 19 years now since the European Union signed off their accounts. When we had a vote on this year's budget in the European Parliament, I made a point of order actually before that vote was taking place and stood up and questioned the President of the Parliament and said, look, Mr. President, should we actually be signing off this year's Parliament, this year's budgets, if we haven't signed off the last 19 years? Let's get those accounts audited. Because quite frankly, if somebody runs a business, if I don't audit my accounts at the end, not only have I got the tax man on my back, but any limited company is in a situation where they'll be closed down and find themselves before the company's caught.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, regarding the Scotland, I think Scotland has a problem of geography. It's a long way away from its markets. One of the ways that I think that can be addressed is through HS2. I think the way that we're trying to open up the Northern Powerhouse and beyond that Scotland will be of benefit to Scotland. It's not of itself a solution to all their requirements, but I think it's a very positive move. But we should never forget the impact of geography, because as far as the EU is concerned, we are on the western fringe of Europe. We have to, when we trade with Europe, we have to go over or under a channel, and the geographical position is fundamental to one's opportunities. Regarding the auditing, when I left the European Parliament, I remember that the UK Department of Work and Pensions budget hadn't been signed off for 11 years, but that never seemed to attract the press interest. It is a common feature. I'm not excusing it, but to say that they haven't been signed off for 19 years is not actually correct. Each year they are not signed off because there is always overflow from one year to the other, because that's the way it works, because the EU Commission is trying to recover monies that were fraudulently claimed. And the UK is not one of the laggards, I have to say, in claiming money to which it is not entitled. Very easy to blame the Commission for everything, but the Member States have a responsibility to do their job too.
Thank you. The
just come back on again. Just on the manufacturing side of things, yes, I mean, I don't think the area that Britain's excelling in at the moment and doing well in is the high value manufacturing, and it's because we're a developed high cost country to live in. We have high standards of living with high wages compared with a lot of the countries that are producing ships, and so I think trying to compete in markets where you need very low wages to compete, I don't think there's any future in it, and that's largely why those jobs have gone elsewhere. So I think there is future in manufacturing, but in high value manufacturing, and we're actually doing quite well in that sector. And on the accounts, in fact, the EU part of the accounts, the internal part, has been signed off every year for 8, 10, 12 years now. It's the fact is that most of the spending is done by the member states. The member states have their own accounting procedures, which the European Union has no power over. So it is the fact that they don't have the EU at an EU level doesn't have the right to audit the British government's accounts. So it can't do it. It hasn't got the right to do it. And it is
maybe the fault of the farmers.
It's not the farmers. But it is the member states. It's the spending inside the member states which doesn't get signed off. It's not the spending at a European level that doesn't get signed. That has been signed off every year.
Okay.
Sorry. I want to counter Jim on deregulation as well, because basically deregulation can only happen to a certain amount. One of the biggest problems we've had is British gold plating. So when left to our own devices, we end up putting in rules which are far, far more onerous than the EU standard. The EU rules are basically a minimum standard. Driving hours, all sorts of things, virtually everything, we have a higher standard. So why, when we voluntarily decided to have a higher standard than Europe has, if we withdraw, should we suddenly change our mind and have a lower standard?
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 more cards here. If anybody else wants to put in a card, can they do so straight away, please? And when we've taken these final 2 points, I'm going to give our panel a couple of minutes each, speaking in the opposite order from the order in which they spoke at the beginning, so that they can have the final word. But somebody here has asked a question about French farmers and French farmers protesting. Is that person still here? Who wants to ask a question about French farmers?
He's gone to burn some land.
Okay.
He's gone to the chip shop.
Well, I'm going to, if he or she isn't here, I'm going to rule it out of order because it isn't directly relevant to the subject anyway. So the last question is from Tech 2, who is our friend with the blue t-shirt in front of me here.
I have a question back, so I think it's all right. Thank you very much. Regarding the they need us more than we need them, I think we need them more than they need us. Our exports to the EU account for 13% of our GDP. EU imports to the UK account for only 3% of the EU's GDP.
But that reflects the economy.
We need them more than they need us.
Yeah, but they're 10 times bigger than us, mate.
They certainly do.
Just on a percentage of GDP, it's 13% of our GDP.
You're presenting
Convert that to
But of course,
we've got panel to answer the question.
I know. Out of order.
But of course, with an economy, to take for that side, and economies come and go and change, and economic cycles come and go. We'll have a situation where, in fact, when I started my last year speaking to our trade deficit with the European Union was, I think, 71 billion. It's now gone up to 89 billion. Things change. The strength of the pound obviously affects that, and I hope you'll contend that. But surely the ability to actually go out and trade isn't just dependent, as I said at the start, Ted, on our EU membership. And I really believe, actually, even if the European Union closed their doors, closed their borders, which they couldn't, manufacturing would increase this country, so there'd be an increase in import substitution. What we find, as this gentleman said earlier, that would be hugely beneficial to our balance of trade deficit. So every cloud has a silver lining, and I think this is a huge opportunity. And what it's about is actually about believing in our ability. It's about believing who we are as a nation and how we can actually re-engage with those familiar networks across the globe. For heaven's sake, we've got the Commonwealth, a huge organisation. It's not some throwback to the empire anymore. We've got countries, Rwanda, Cameroon, Mozambique, were never even British colonies before we gave them independence. And it strikes me, as a country that's given independence to over a third of the world, I don't see what's wrong with getting our own independence back.
All those corrupt countries in Africa, you want to do business with them?
I just don't think you think we're good enough. That's what it really boils down to.
Didn't say that at all.
But that's what it comes out as. We are good enough. And that's the part of what I think for this country, we can stand on our own 2 feet without being messed about by anybody else.
Okay.
Could I ask, make a comment about Chisel then?
No, I think we're going to have one last question.
It was your comment about...
It's about gold plating.
You mentioned that Britain, of course, gold plates all the EU regulations. But to my mind, that just proves to me that we're temperamentally unsuited to the European Union. The European Union churns out vast numbers of laws all the time. We lived as a democracy for 750 years with a small parliament passing small amounts of laws which we made robust with a very good civil service. We now are deluged with vast numbers of laws that come out of the European Union, not properly thought through, and as you say, our wonderful civil service does gold plating. I think we're temperamentally unsuited.
I don't think we're temperamentally unsuited. I think that we sometimes train our civil servants in the wrong way. They're very, very unwilling to take...
Yeah, we're doing it wrong.
No, we do sometimes get things wrong. We do sometimes get things wrong. And one of the things we've tended to do over we want to know exactly what everything means to micromanage. And I think this is a problem that there's a problem we have to get rid of, because we do micromanage far too much. And when and of course most of the regulations that we do, most of the directives that come out of Europe are based on the single market anyway. So even if we left, if we wanted to sell a product into that marketplace, it would still have to meet those standards. I mean, this is again the Jaguar Land Rover argument. If we leave, we won't have a voice in Brussels because...
Are we temperamentally unsuited?
No, we're not temperamentally unsuited.
But you just said, we like to do it this way.
No, I said we are not temperamentally unsuited. We are just as flexible as anybody else, and we can draft laws. And I think we've seen this happening more recently. Certainly with the last government, when I was an MEP, we were working very, very closely with my colleagues in the coalition at a European level to make sure that we got things right at a European level before, and I don't think we have engaged at that level before. What we used to do was wait until something was a fait accompli, after it had gone through all the committees, and basically then think, oh my God, we need to vote this down when we failed to put the amendments forward. So I think we have actually learned the processes much better now. And certainly in the last Parliament, I felt that we were doing a good job of working in tandem between government and at a European level to make sure that we got things right. And we haven't done that in the past. I think we have actually solved that problem. So we can adapt. So we are incredibly adaptable. We are incredibly adaptable. But I think just we went through a period when absolutely everything had to be tied down to the last dot and last I. I think we've got over that now. So we went through a period of gold plating, which I think we've actually put behind us.
So now you think we ignore the laws like the French? No, we just
transpose
them in a more sensible way.
I'm now beginning to draw this to a close. The original proposition was that the economic benefits of remaining in the EU outweigh the costs of membership. I'd like our 4 panellists to speak for no more than 2 minutes, summing up their case either for or against it, starting with against from Jim Carter.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone. Whatever way you look at this issue, I think it's been great. We've had some very passionate comments from both sides of the debate, and I hope there is also people here tonight who genuinely haven't made up their mind, because you're not going to change my mind, I'm not going to change Ted 2's mind, but I think we both agree this is such an important issue. We really want people to genuinely go out and get engaged and vote on this issue. As far as I'm concerned, we made a big mistake when we joined the common markets back in 1963. We should have listened to what President de Gaulle said on the 2 applications when he vetoed our previous application. When he said no, he said Britain, her business practices, her customs, her culture are completely different to the continental model. And I think he's right. And I also think Winston Churchill was right in the speech he made in the House of Parliament. And Winston Churchill is often called as someone who supported the European project. He did support the European project, but he supported it from the context of Britain remaining outside that project. He recognised as someone who served in the First World War and of course was our leader during the Second World War, the need for France and Germany to work closer together. Nobody wants to see a return to those tragedies that we had. But on the 11th of May 1953, he said in a speech, in the House of Commons, he said, if the United Kingdom ever finds herself in a situation where she has to choose between a continental Europe and the open seas, she must always choose the open seas. To me, it's about democracy. As I said, this isn't some economic cost issue, because, quite frankly, I would not want to give up my sovereignty for cheaper phone calls when I'm working or going on holiday in the European Union. It's a far bigger issue than that. I would like to finish with, I think, one of the greatest parliamentarians of modern times, who sadly passed away recently, the late Tony Benn. And he said, of our interest in the common market, he said, it was a coup d'etat. It was a coup d'etat of the political class that did not recognise the democratic rights of the British people. I want a sovereign parliament who can repeal poor legislation, and if they're not very good, they can be replaced by a better government elected by the good people of the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Well, I started off by saying why the single market was so important to us, and I'm going to finish off by looking outwards at the rest of the world. There is absolutely nothing to stop us now, and actually nothing does stop us, because we are, as some of my opponents have said, good enough. And we do sell products into the rest of the world, and we're very successful at this. And lo and behold, we're doing this while we're members of the European Union. So we don't need to leave the European Union to sell products to the United States and to other markets. And what about the Commonwealth? Let's rejuvenate the Commonwealth, we're told. Yet every single Commonwealth leader wants us to stay in. Why? Because, for one thing, they want access to the European market themselves, and we are their greatest advocates within the European framework. We are the ones that talk on their behalf. I mean, I made a speech that was very, very fundamental in getting Pakistan a special deal with the European Union. And this is why they want us in. Also, because we are the conduit for the Commonwealth, we actually gain trade as well. So, in every way, we have everything that we want from in terms of trading with the rest of the world. We can use the European Union's trade agreements. They've got a bigger weight to attract trade agreements from other quarters. If we fall back on the World Trade Organization rules, then that's a very, very much worse situation. We end up being a non-aligned country asking India to represent us at the WTO. So it's not a question of being at the top table. So we have everything we want. We can go out and trade with the rest of the world just as well from within Europe as from outside, probably better from within, because we have the European trade agreements, and we have also the benefit of the single market that I put to you at the beginning. So I don't think it's going to make us stronger by cutting off our left arm to make our right arm stronger. We need both of our arms. Let's stay in the European Union, stay in the single market, and also let's trade with the rest of the world. We can do both.
Thank you. There is no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt that we would be better off on our own and trading with the rest of the world. We would still trade with Europe, not as the EU. Very interesting email that I got sent today. This is from European Commission Vice President Viviane Reding. Now, I don't know how correct this is, but I'm going to give it to these people. You can check it out. An advert going around Facebook, I think it is. It says, Britons are too ignorant about Europe to vote in a referendum on the subject. Well, I say we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a load of crap. Not too ignorant to vote on this subject.
Right, the last word. I would like to take as my text two of the questions made from people here today. One was about where's the passion, and the other one was about EHIC. The subject under debate is all about economics, cost, benefits. I find it difficult to get passionate about numbers. I find it very easy to get passionate about Europe, about the European Union, and our membership of the European Union, because I've always believed that our membership of the European Union is our future, and we will be stronger the more a role that we play within it. I'll come back to that in a moment, about a few of my other passions. The EHIC comment, I did preface my comments by saying this was a benefit to consumers, so I would agree that yes, it is a benefit to individuals, so we have that in agreement. But I would also say that the economy is all about individuals. The economy is not some abstract concept that benefits the Treasury. The economy is something that should be of benefit to each one of us, to our kids, to our grannies and grandpas, all of whom should benefit individually by having a better quality of life. That's what the economy is for, and so we agree about that too. So I'm passionate about that. I was passionate about the work I was called to do in the European Parliament. I'd never been involved in politics. I was getting fed up as a businessman of being regulated by people who'd never done an honest job in their lives. I got involved in politics because I said, where are the business people? And they said, where are you? I said, I'm not in politics. They said, that's the problem. Business people don't put up their hands. So I did, and I was elected then for 2 successive terms. I found my work there very different from the work that James finds. I'm not knocking James's view. He is clearly very principled as to what he believes in. I was very aware that I could not propose legislation or repeal legislation, but I could shape legislation. And that's what I did. I shaped legislation on behalf of the UK and persuaded colleagues in other countries to support my views, and I supported some of their views. And as a result, I like to believe that the legislation I was involved with in employment, social affairs, health and safety, environment, food labelling, food ingredients, all of which benefited the UK. Because ultimately, I'm passionate about sovereignty, I'm passionate about control, but I know how that we will control our own destiny. It's not by making our own laws, it's by shaping them in concert with other people. And I would just quote one little remark from our mutual friend, Boris Johnson, who made a different conclusion than I will make from his remark. But he said, successive European treaties have vastly expanded the areas in which the EU bodies operate. So there is virtually no aspect of public policy which is untouched. The EU now takes an interest in energy, in humanitarian aid, in education, health, etc., and the ECJ becomes the supreme judicial body. Now, how has this happened? It hasn't happened because there's been a coup from unelected commissioners in Brussels. Brussels is a place where members of the European Parliament and others go to work and to discuss and decide. It's happened because over the last 25 years or so, individual member states have realised that the way to control their economy, the way to control their destiny, is in partnership with other countries. But if you set your own laws in isolation, you do not control your own destiny. You control your destiny by shaping laws in common. We can't have a throwback to the 1850s, the world of empire, much as many of us might wish to do that. The reality is we live in a big, wide, dangerous world, the world of the internet. You do need common roles, and you need to shape your own destiny, as I say, working with others. I'm passionate about that, and if you want to see more of my passion, buy my book, The Gravy Train.
Thank you very much, all of you. We've had a great evening. We've strayed a little bit from Ted's subject, and I shall have to apologise to him afterwards. For that. But you've all been out there absolutely brilliant, and thank you so much. Now, you'd like us to vote now, would you? Right. We're going to have to do this by a show of hands because we haven't got any other technology available to us. And I remind you that the proposition is the economic benefits of remaining in the EU outweigh the costs of membership. Ted, can I ask your brilliant staff if they could act as tellers and count the votes for us, please?
Nikki.
So can I have those in favour of that motion?
Yep.
You can vote.
Oh, can we?
Yeah, you can vote. We've got two up here.
Yes, we include the speakers.
Yeah.
14.
Okay, and those against?
Change your mind,
We used to include the speakers.
It's going to be about the same, isn't it?
Mr. Chairman, you've got to put your...
You've got to cast the vote.
See, you've got to cast the vote.
You've got to cast the vote.
Is it time?
I think it's 14.
I don't think I should use a casting vote. There are too many more debates to go.
Oh, let's ask for abstentions.
Okay.
Are there any abstentions?
No, we've all voted. So you're 14. Thank you very much indeed.